It's really exciting to see people when they come in and they have this relief that they have found a resource that they can use to guide them through a process which is relatively new.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 241. How are the drone responders advancing the public safety use of drones? That's the question we explore in this podcast with Charles Werner, director of the DroneResponders, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to facilitate preparedness, response, and resilience using unmanned aircraft systems operated by public safety organizations. Charles is the retired Charlottesville, Virginia fire chief, a 44-year veteran of public safety, and an FAA-certified Part 107 remote pilot. He organized and is the chair of the National Council on Public Safety UAS. He also serves on several local, state, and national committees and has authored more than 120 published articles on public safety. In 2018, he was selected as Homeland Security Person of the Year by Homeland Security Today Magazine for his work on public safety UAS. In this episode of the Drone Radio Show, Charles gives us an update on the drone responders and what they're doing to advance the public safety use of drones. But before we hear from Charles, I want to thank those of you who are supporting my funding campaign. Now you have the option of making a one-time donation in any amount by going to DroneRadioshow.com/donate. Whether it's $1, $100, or much more, you can help defray the cost of production and keep the podcast going and growing. And if you'd like to make a monthly contribution, you can still go to patreon.com/DroneRadioshow. So let's find out how the drone responders are advancing the public safety use of drones with Charles Werner. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Charles to introduce himself.
Okay, my name is Charles Werner. I am the director of DroneResponders Public Safety Alliance, and we are here today to talk about some of the most recent updates and activity of the DroneResponders Public Safety Alliance.
Charles, what is the DroneResponders?
The DroneResponders Public Safety Alliance is a nonprofit which pulls together participants from across the country from public safety, from industry, business, academia, non-government organizations to help advance all three areas of the public safety UAS ecosystem, which consist of enabling the drones for good, countering the drones for bad, and keeping up with and being involved with the evolution of air traffic management.
Now, we spoke a few months ago, just after the organization launched. How has DroneResponders grown since then?
We have grown to over 1,000 members in the DroneResponders Public Safety Alliance. And what we're seeing now is a lot of engagement of public safety and all the other associated partners to begin conversations, working on projects, work groups, and so many more things to actually move public safety UAS forward.
At this year's Commercial UAV Expo, DroneResponders hosted the first Public Safety UAS Summit. Tell us about it.
The Public Safety UAS Summit that was held this year at Commercial UAV Expo in Las Vegas came together in a conversation with Lisa Murray at Diversified Communications, and we were sharing what DroneResponders was all about and what we were trying to do as far as providing some content, but also getting into more of an engagement in the strategic thinking process. It was then that we partnered with Commercial UAV Expo, and the first event was planned and has now been completed. And we had over 100 participants, and it was a great conversation between public safety UAS programs, some new, some more mature, and sharing ideas back and forth, creating networking between individuals, and then actually going forward with some strategic direction.
Out of the summit, what emerged as the top priorities for the organization?
The need for minimum training requirements and certifications, the need for tactical beyond visual line of sight operational waivers, and a public outreach program for public UAS in their communities.
In regard to training, what's the real issue that concerns drone responders?
With training, when you look at the requirements for public safety remote pilots, there is no minimum requirement that's actually stated anywhere. And the only thing that you effectively need to have to fly in the national airspace is a Part 107 license, which is simply a written test. What the discussion's about is what defines what that minimum requirement looks like. And while there are many training companies out there that do remote pilot training, there's nothing for them to use as a reference either. So when somebody comes to tell public safety that we can train you, or we have trained public safety, there is no real definitive understanding what that means. And that means that essentially, if they say they've trained public safety, it means that they did, but we don't know what they trained to meet any kind of requirements. So the requirements don't exist.
And wouldn't you agree that, generally speaking, public safety officials are extremely mindful when introducing a new technology into the field?
Yes. As you mentioned, anytime that you introduce new technology, there are a lot of issues and concerns. What do we do? How do we do it? And how do we do it safely and effectively? And more importantly, now you have responders that are going to be actually pilots in the national airspace. There is no separation between a manned pilot and an unmanned pilot. You have the same responsibilities and the same risks in flying in the national airspace. And one of the things that DroneResponders wants to do is to make sure that we are providing guidance to people that can meet the FAA's number one priority of safety by providing some guidance and documentation of how to go forward appropriately.
How are you developing the guidance?
What we're looking to do now to move this training as far as minimum requirements forward is we're going to use the NIST standard training methods for small unmanned aircraft systems, which actually has been developed by some members of public safety to create testing lanes to test different types of tasks of flight. And it gives guidance of how long it should take, as well as accuracy, so that we have some minimum guidelines that say you have been able to achieve these tasks and manipulate the aircraft appropriately. And this way we have something to reference.
There's been a lot of excitement about what beyond visual line of sight offers to public safety. What is DroneResponders doing in this area?
I referenced the tactical beyond visual line of sight waiver. That essentially is a waiver that allows us to operate in and around buildings in dangerous situations. It might be a bomb threat, it might be a suspicious package, it might be an active shooter, SWAT operation, or it might also be a hazmat situation. What's unique about these situations is that you can't have either the remote pilot or the visual observer within visual line of sight just because of the hazard. But on the other side of it, it's an incident scene that we control the ground perimeter, and we really limit or mitigate the dangers of the operation. And what it does is it allows us to operate beyond visual line of sight in a very limited space by low altitude and close proximity to an event. And that means that we actually keep responders out of harm's way.
How are you advancing the use of this waiver?
Well, we're currently working with Chula Vista, California Police Department. They have a beyond visual line of sight for their drone as a responder program, and we're looking to work with them and York County, who's received one of these close proximity, low altitude waivers, to develop some criteria that we can provide some recommendations to the FAA to provide some guidance, so it's not just an ask without meeting the safety use case.
So is it making sure that they have the procedures in place so they can easily request the waiver when it's needed?
Well, the waiver hopefully will be something that you request in advance. So we're hopefully setting the requirements that can be then taught to other public safety agencies across the country, so they will know when they make their waiver what they have to look at as far as a use case when they submit their waiver to get it. Our goal is to make this process more quickly to process, but also making sure that it ensures that every locality is looking at its own safety use case. It's similar to when a department gets a blanket COA. Blanket COA says that you automatically receive a night waiver to fly for those operations. And it specifically has the requirements, what you have to do in order to fly that way.
Now, in regard to public outreach, what should public safety organizations consider?
To have a public outreach program for Public Safety UAS when they're starting a program for their communities. Going through the process of making sure you're involving the ACLU, that you're addressing the privacy issues, but you're also communicating with the public, and that there's a method that tells you how do you go about doing that? What's the messaging? How do you engage people? And if it's perhaps town hall meetings or other ways to create frequently asked questions on a website, a number of those different types of strategies to make sure that the public understands fully what you're doing and is okay with it. There's a number of things that go with it. It's like, having some demos for the public to see what you have, what you're doing, how it works. They get a chance to see firsthand the benefits of what public safety drones bring to their community. We've seen literally that we've gone from nice to have to need to have in localities that have drone programs because of what they allow us to see that we can't see from the ground. So it's kind of exciting to see all that. But more importantly, it means that in these unusual situations, we can use that information to mitigate it more quickly, which makes the responder and the community more safe.
Just recently, the FAA sponsored the National Drone Safety Awareness Week. What was DroneResponders' involvement?
Well, this year, the FAA initiated the first National Drone Safety Awareness Week, which I assume will become an annual event, which was hugely successful across the country because it started on November 4th, and each day of the week, it focused on a different sector of the UAS community, not just public safety, but public safety was on Monday. And on Monday, we actually did a webinar with AUVSI to talk about safety of drones in the national airspace and how to go about doing some of these things, making people aware of drone responders, but also telling about some of the survey and the information that we learned as well. So it was a great event, and the event reached thousands of people across the country who all had different types of events telling how drones make a difference in our communities.
DroneResponders has been very successful in creating strategic partnerships. Who are some of the partners that you're working with?
We currently have partnerships with the Alliance for Drone Innovation, the International Public Safety Association, the National Alliance on Public Safety GIS, the Commercial Drone Alliance, the Commercial UAV Expo Americas, Commercial UAV Europe, and we've partnered with the National Press Photographers Association in working on developing a public safety media policy to provide guidelines that will promote the effective coexistence during emergencies. We're also excited to be doing a partnership with Women in Drones, and we've had some great events with them, but it's also creating some opportunities for us to share to girls and women the opportunities within public safety and beyond, and hopefully that we'll be doing some STEM projects in the future as well.
What does it say that DroneResponders has been able to establish such a high number of quality partnerships?
I think the reason that we're having the interest in the partnerships is there is a great level of interest and a momentum now in the adoption of drones. And so everyone has an interest of figuring out how do we coexist and effectively fly in the national airspace to where we can complement what each other are doing and that we don't create any safety issues when flying. So it's new, it's exciting, and everybody is looking to figure out how do we move forward, and collectively is the best way to go.
Are you finding that around the country, there seems to be many more public agencies actually formalizing budgets for drone programs?
Yes, what I'm seeing happen now is the adoption rate of drones being used in public safety has never been at a higher rate as it is now. There have been so many use cases that have demonstrated the value of how drones actually change the operations to make us safer and to make us more effective in how we do our jobs. And now there are many departments that actually have so many other examples to follow and information they can use to share with their communities and the successes that have happened globally, that we're going to see this increase, I think, continue to gain traction and expand even quicker.
Obviously, we learn by the successes of others. But have there been any failures in structuring a drone program where the lessons learned have been just as valuable?
We're capturing some of that and starting to share some of it. I think some of the things we found, and we have a guide that says if you're going to start a program, here's the considerations you should go through so you don't fall into that trap. One of the big things that we learned early on is people that didn't define the missions well found out that they didn't plan accordingly enough to know how this was going to impact their departments as far as the demand. And it could be a combination of cost for the aircraft itself. They also didn't realize, well, I've got the aircraft, now I've got to have all these additional batteries, and now I have to make sure that I'm recording and documenting all of the information that relates to the maintenance and the flight and a lot of things. So there's a lot of aspects that people didn't go into it. Another one of the big things was some people got pulled into early on into some technologies that were shared, perhaps one big UAS unit, which was actually too cumbersome, too difficult. What we found is that in most cases, the simpler that you can make it easier to fly with bringing in what you're looking for as far as results is more successful. So those are some of the lessons we've seen.
Let's move on to some new initiatives. What does DroneResponders have in the works?
One would be our Counter UAS initiative, and that's going to be led by DJ Smith, who is a special agent with the Virginia State Police. That's really to keep a focus on what's happening in that world of countering the drones for bad, because there are so many legal issues that go with that as far as laws and regulations. I think the last time that we saw there were a combination of 21 laws or regulations that prevent the use of counter UAS in these situations. So we're watching the evolution of legislation that comes out. We're looking at the technologies to see what technologies are available that we can use today, and then know as the legislation changes what technologies will be out there that we can use in the future.
And again, who's leading that effort, and what are some of the specific actions that we might expect?
DJ Smith is leading the DroneResponders Counter UAS initiative, so there'll be a work group. He'll be involved in discussion forums where people can talk information and share. He also is doing presentations in different places around the country to tell the current status of counter UAS as it relates to public safety.
What concerns do law enforcement agencies have in regards to counter-drone security?
Well, I think it's varied and it depends on what's happening. I think that we learn a lot of what the potential threats are from our military counterparts in operations around the world. And so we see some threats from small UAS. I think one of the most recent things that kind of increases the concern is actually the attack on Saudi Arabia oil fields, and to realize that same thing could be done here. We've also seen that one of the big problems is with prisons of drones flying over and dropping contraband into the area. It could be guns, drugs, cell phones, which in itself creates new problems for the prisons. And, so we also have concerns about the critical infrastructure, large outdoor events, and it's really trying to stay ahead of that. So I think we're all watching this very closely to find out what tools we have to use and who we can call in those situations, because currently I think the federal agencies, DOJ, DOD, and some others have some capabilities that they can use if needed, if a threat arises. But again, they're very limited in resources.
And adding to the challenge is that local and state agencies really don't have a clear enforcement mandate.
It is very nebulous in some cases of what law enforcement can do, except to engage the person and then see if there's any danger that's being presented. And if they're operating against the regulations that are out there by the FAA, to report them to the FAA. But again, it's a very ambiguous kind of space and a lot of uncertainty as to what exactly should be done in those cases.
In today's environment, what legal authority can local law enforcement agencies rely on?
The FAA does have a law enforcement assistance program on the web that kind of gives some guidance as to here are the regulations, what they look like, and some actions that you can take. There are some things that state laws and local ordinances to cover. For example, peeping Tom laws prevent you from using or doing anything that you're trying to look in to invade the privacy of someone in their home. We have state laws that say if you interfere with incident operations at an emergency, we can stop what you're doing. And if you're doing reckless endangerment of the drone flight over people or some other things, we can take immediate action. So there are some things within our own purviews that we can use to effectively mitigate some of the issues.
Just recently, the DroneResponders announced the first DroneResponders Global Public Safety Conference. Tell us about it.
So we are going to have the DroneResponders Global Public Safety UAS Summit at AUVSI this year. We have partnered with AUVSI to be at Exponential 2020 in Boston, and it's going to be a 3-day event. It's going to be first day will include a big city or large metropolitan UAS element to have conversations between those agencies that are in the very populated urban areas as to the challenges and the successes that they have learned going through this process. They have some very unique situations they deal with, like a lot of RF interference, flying in around skyscrapers, which create kind of that urban canyon effect and interferes a lot with GPS, which is part of the stabilizing factor for drones. The second and third day actually is going to be a combination of content from panels or presentations, but they're all going to be related to a discussion that will follow. And again, taking off from where we got the 3 priorities from the Commercial UAV Expo, we look to go next to see what progress have we made since October and what things do we need to do, and do we need to adjust the priorities if we've gotten to the point where we've addressed some of the top ones, as I hope that we will have. So this is going to be, again, a very unique experience where people are actually engaged in helping plan the future. It's not just come to a conference, sit to people talk, and then go home. This is come, learn, discuss, help develop the strategy for the future, and then continue being involved in working on it after the event. And then it's our goal that we'll have the Commercial UAV Expo and AUVSI Exponential will be 2 annual events that will occur each year that will build off of each other from one event to the other.
Who would benefit most by attending this summit?
It's really good for anyone who has an interest in drones. It can be public safety, it can be government agencies, non-government organizations, academia, and the industry itself, because it's a conversation where we kind of lay out the problems that we have, we learn of what solutions are available, and we identify where we have gaps to start working on some of the other things that are out there. So I think it's really open to public safety programs that have just started, people that are looking to start public safety programs, and those people that have mature programs as well. So it's really open to a large group of people so that we can hopefully have a very big engagement and share information back and forth between each other and define where we want to go from here.
How is the event structured within Exponential? Is it a standalone event or part of a public safety track?
Well, this is actually a defined and specific event for drone responders. It'll be a co-located event at AUVSI. So you'll have the benefit of coming and participating with public safety in our 3 days, but you could also go see the exhibits there from all the different unmanned systems that will be represented.
I'm sure it's a great opportunity for public safety professionals to network.
With any conference or class, the most important thing that we see as a result is the networking that takes place, the ability for people to either share what they've done as far as successes and lessons learned, as well as the newbie who comes and has the questions of what'd you do, how'd you get there, and really learn from those people to avoid making the same mistakes. Our goal collectively is to move public safety unmanned aircraft systems forward as quickly, safely, and effectively as we can.
Is there anything that we missed that we should talk about?
The exciting thing is we're seeing a lot of momentum. There's a lot of interest in the space because people are seeing the benefits, but they also realize the challenges and what we still need to learn. So the exciting thing is the networking we're seeing continue to build with drone responders to engage a larger population across all those sectors that I mentioned to really collect information, share information, and collaborate to help us all move forward. And it's really exciting to see people when they come in and they have this relief that they have found a resource that they can use to guide them through a process which is relatively new and not have to go through those same mistakes, not take as long to get through those mistakes, and have people that they know they can call and talk with. Because a lot of the departments that are out there doing it are all willing to be mentors and help other agencies as they begin their programs.
And for my final question, Charles, what message would you like to leave regarding the use of drones in public safety?
What we've seen with drones in public safety is that they provide us a view from the sky that we cannot see from the ground. In many cases, there are situations, there are hazards, there is information that helps us to prevent putting responders and citizens in harm's way. These tools have changed from being nice to have to need to have because you can see so much more that you can't see from the ground. I just can't repeat that enough. And when we have tactical situations like SWAT operations or hazardous material operations, and we can get critical information without exposing our personnel, that is something that is hugely important to us as responders. It's an exciting time as we see so many agencies coming forward and sharing what they're doing and moving this for other agencies to do the same.
That's it for episode 241 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Charles Werner of the DroneResponders. I want to thank Charles for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about drone responders or want to connect with Charles, check out the webpage at DroneResponders.org. For information on the Drone Responders Global Public Safety Conference on May 5th through the 8th, go to exponential.org. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1, you can help defray the cost of production. To donate, go to droneradioshow.com/donate or patreon.com/droneradioshow. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Goers.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.